Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad to welcome you as part of our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and distributed live stream. By entering this virtual meeting room, you give your consent to be recorded and distributed by Simeon Morrow Public Speaking Presentations, Vienna Live with Simeon Morrow, and other third parties. If you prefer to not be recorded, please turn off your camera and microphone and/or go to the Facebook Live video feed, the link to which I will now place in the chat room. For a better experience, please turn off your microphone and set your video to gallery view. This show thrives on participant contributions, and all participants are encouraged to actively participate in this webinar by asking questions and making comments. To do so, please either write in the chat room, raise your hand, or raise your hand to say hi, turn on your microphone to say hi, and I'll be delighted to include your perspective in the conversation. Tonight, our featured guests are Matthew Mazzotta, an artist who focuses on community-specific public art projects, and Sylvia Eisenburger-Kunz, Secretary General of the Society of Friends of the Fine Arts Vienna. Matthew, welcome.
Thanks for having me. So, Simeon, how would we like to start in this regard? Should I just introduce myself?
Sure. Sure. How about you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the fine arts?
Sure. Yeah, my name's Matthew Mazzotta. I work with communities and their public spaces, and I do this both nationally and internationally. Recently, I've been asked to do locally. So I actually am back in the hometown I grew up in, and we're working on a couple projects here. So that's actually a new treat for me. I haven't done that. The work I do is based on research. So I'm always going to a location as an outsider and trying to understand what this community has for issues or unmet desires. Something that the community itself hasn't addressed or the local government. And can we make a work that takes that as the focus? So I basically do a number of kind of design charrettes or information gathering sessions, and we'll look at that in more detail. I'll show a video about how we do that. And then we kind of synthesize that down to, okay, we have the issue, we have the point, this is what we want to design for. And then the creative brain comes in and says, how can we make this happen for a large number of people? You'll also notice that a lot of the works I do need people to complete them. So we'll see that in some of the videos. Simeon, is that kind of like a nice little opening?
That's a great opening. So let's go on. Tell us about this fascinating Storefront Theater.
Okay. What I'd like to do right now is grab the screen and show a video. This video is about 6 or 7 minutes, but it really holds not only the context for the work and the work itself, it also shows this research methodology. I just want to start off by saying this work, I was invited, I think in 2000, I can't remember now, maybe 13 or 14, to work with a small town of 800 people in Lyons, Nebraska, which is in the United States, the middle of the United States. So let me grab the screen and we'll see this. If people have trouble seeing this, please let me know. But I'll start this video now. Okay.
What happens when a small town in Nebraska, dealing with the changing face of rural America, invites an artist to take a deeper look into their untapped resources? The Storefront Theater is a unique event space that transforms Main Street into an outdoor theater. It is a collaboration with the people of Lyons, Nebraska, and the surrounding towns to seamlessly weave art into their downtown. The project begins when the Center for Rural Affairs, a local nonprofit focused on strengthening rural communities, small businesses, and family farms, invites artist Matthew Mazzotta to organize an art project with the people of Lyons. The artist first begins the project by asking people from the community to join him in a living room placed on Main Street as a way to provoke discussion and capture stories and ideas from people that might not feel they have anything to contribute to an artwork. During those Main Street discussions, many community members reveal fond memories of a once thriving downtown and express a strong desire to see the downtown become the center of community life once again. One local person points out that one of the buildings is only a storefront, a wall with no building behind it, just an empty lot. Upon investigation, it turns out that this location is owned by the city of Lyons, and with its support, becomes the site of the art project. What has happened in Lyons has happened all across the country. Small town Main Street USA has suffered as goods, services, entertainment, and the jobs that go with them moved away. Buildings that once housed bowling alleys, barbershops, bars, theaters, and restaurants have closed their doors. As rural downtowns lie fallow, what will become of these carefully constructed commercial hubs of the past?
Well, that's history for you. That they haven't figured out what to do with them all. Somebody has to come up with an idea.
After the storefront was selected as the site of the project, residents of Lyons came forward to bring their diverse and highly skilled talents to the project, shaping the final design and bringing many other members of the community into the final work of art. Using 2 hydraulic pump arms, false storefront, and metal awning, they can be lowered onto the street to form the support structure of the seating. A screen is pulled in when the theater is open. However, both the seats and the screen disappear between events, giving the impression that there is nothing unusual about this downtown. Only word of mouth informs others about Lyons' secret theater. Before the retractable storefront wall is even conceived, another Lyons resident, who says he doesn't mind being called eccentric, enters the story. Bill Hedges, a local mail carrier, recently retired and decided to take up his lifelong passion of movie making. When Bill first hears of the project, he expresses interest and gives a tour of his basement that includes a personal movie theater, a recreation of a 1950s coffee shop that features a working jukebox, and a full replica of the interior of the spaceship from the 1960s TV show Lost in Space.
So you just flip the appropriate switches and it appears for you.
Inertial guidance system destroyed.
I'm Bill Hedges, and I've always been a fan of Lost in Space.
Bill's passion for the TV show does not end with what he created in his basement. He also recently bought one of the empty storefronts downtown and turned it into a movie set depicting the spaceship's landing site. While building his movie set, Bill also starts to amass a collection of video making equipment and explains his idea to write and shoot original science fiction movies and cast his cat as the main actor since he decided that human actors would be too costly and unpredictable in their scheduling. When asked, Bill is more than happy to write and shoot a movie called Decades for the project that has downtown Lyons as its focus. The premise of the 45-minute movie is to explore the history of the downtown from the founding of Lyons to the present day as a way to see where the town has been and where it's going. After it's announced that Bill will shoot his movie, he sets a schedule for shooting each decade. People from Lyons and the surrounding community show up as actors dressed in costumes and with vintage cars that match the time period.
Right here, she is, going to be an extra, but she's also going to direct the extras.
He stages scenes such as the old telephone switchboard operator, conversations in the coffee shop, and the elaborate montage of Saturday nights on Main Street in the 1960s.
Action. Go ahead.
Another Lyons native who now works in the movie industry hears about the project and comes back to town with his drone to help shoot Lyons from above. On a warm night in November, The main street of Lyons, which is usually empty after dark, fills with people from the community and beyond for the opening of the Storefront Theater and the debut of the movie Decades. As parents, grandparents, and children of all ages gather on Main Street to witness something experimental in their own downtown, they sit side by side to see themselves, their neighbors, and the town they call home reflected so clearly back to them. The Storefront Theater taps directly into the opportunity that exists in rural towns across America to creatively repurpose and reprogram downtown buildings that once were the backbone of community life into new sites of experience, interaction, and dialogue. The message on this night is simple. People that sit together can dream together.
That's the Storefront Theater. I'm going to stop that right now. And I'm actually going to show one more little thing here. Let me see if I can do it. Here we go. Just a couple more slides. Let me get this to full. So across the United States, across the world, you might have heard this story, this phenomenon of small town USA. Their downtowns are, having challenges. Obviously, downtowns had a starting point at one end of this narrative arc. People want to move to a location, and eventually they say, hey, I need a grocery store, I need a hardware store, I need whatever. And then these towns grow up and they coordinate to make these main streets. And they're kind of like the public face of a community. They hold all the commerce. This is where the hubbub happens. People socialize and everything. However, people have tried to reinvent the main street many times, but a number of small towns are struggling to push retail through the storefronts, the brick and mortar. And that's a problem because everybody can get everything cheaper. Amazon, one click, and economies of scale. You can just get things in different ways. Of course, not all businesses go out of business, but enough to change the character of many small towns. And so anyways, I was invited to this one. And as you heard, people spoke about that. The young people said, we've never had a downtown that had any life in it. Other people said that was one of the worst things that we lost. So we devised this idea of the Storefront Theater to bring people back downtown. And you saw with the movie, we wanted to produce a movie that was stretch that whole, the founding of the town all the way to the present moment. And we used all the actors were local people. And so in this way, when the Storefront Theater opened, it was like you could hear a pin drop, like they were watching the story of their town, but the people that were telling the story were actually the people in their town. So, costumes were there, people donated vintage cars. Then people, volunteered to be part of the script and act out the different versions for this movie. Bill, who usually makes movies with his cat, I asked him, hey, could you work with people? He agreed. And so the whole town came together. And even though not everybody would dress up in costumes, it was such an event on Main Street. This would happen all the time. People just came to see the filming of this movie anyway. So it's kind of like a town-wide thing. People have pride where they live, and they wanted to be part of it. Some of the wives of the farmers pushed their husbands to dress up and sit as extras in the film as well, and they obliged. And then the filming happened, which is kind of a miracle to watch, your town become the focus of a story. And all these people share their stories, but also were the actors. So anyways, that's the Storefront Theater. And essentially, it was like a call to arms in a way. It was saying, hey, we lost this downtown. Can we transform downtown, the Main Street, into a movie theater? And can we tell the story about where we were and where we're going? And so what erupted out of this was a number of conversations that basically said, what's our next chapter? And since then, like a gallery, an art gallery popped up. I think a number of different storefronts started having things in them, not quite selling things, businesses, but they've been reconceptualized as places where people get together. So people can see the value of the downtown. I think I'm going to leave it there with this project, but I will say that with my work, I work in public space, so it's not the gallery or the museum. So oftentimes the people, seeing the work or experiencing it might not have a history of going to the museum. And so you have to produce a work, at least this is how I do it, so that anybody has access to it. They immediately can get the project, they can understand. And the whole premise of all practice I do is, how do you take concepts and bring them into the public discourse? I've done it through these experiential spaces, these social spaces, so that you actually figure out what the issue is, design a space where people can come into that space and have time to actually sit shoulder to shoulder with their neighbors and look at their situation from a different vantage point. I'll leave it there for the Storefront Theater, and we'll show a couple other videos as we go through, but that's the Storefront Theater. And it kind of gave that research methodology of the outdoor living room, which was my way of bringing the meeting to the people, because many times we've all been asked to be part of a meeting that might be at the university or the city hall. It's at a certain hour. It has a certain agenda. And sometimes people say, hey, I don't really feel like my voice was invited there. I see it's for the public, but I think your agenda is kind of closed to me. When I try to do the outdoor living room, what I try to do is leave it completely open. I let everybody's experiences come to the top. And if we want to speak about the outdoor living room technique, we can as we go, because there's a whole process I do. I have 10 like kind of softball questions, but we can get into that if that's where the conversation goes.
Excellent. So I'd like to bring in Sylvia Eisenburger-Kunz, Secretary General of the Friends of the Fine Arts Vienna. So Sylvia, you're very fond of this Storefront Theater. However, I wonder, Matthew talks about reviving something that's past any building, any area of town. You could think of Pompeii, close to Naples, that's been abandoned. It's abandoned for a reason, because people have moved on. As the Viennese economist Joseph Schumpeter said, it's because something new came, the iPhone came, or the movie theater came, or the mall came, or something. So tell us your thoughts about the Storefront Theater and why you think that's important, when clearly people have other places to gather. They don't have to gather at a place that has outlived its usefulness.
Well, I was immediately charmed when I saw the project, because it is art that is being brought to public use, and it's in such a friendly way. I was really enthused, because I saw this, the pictures of this little small town, Main Street, but Main Street sort of abandoned. And then there's this empty facade, we talked about the Potemkin village. You know, it was a storefront and no store behind it, nothing behind it. And so when I saw what was done to that the artist transformed it into a public meeting place in such a clever, amusing way and friendly way, I loved it immediately. And he really managed to transform it into something else, because apparently the store was no longer needed. And he built this theater and made it a place where people really love to get together again. And he brought life to Main Street with his work of art. I'm extremely charmed by what I saw. Congratulations, Matthew.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you.
Fantastic. So let's go on to our next conversation, which is, what is public art? So Sylvia, tell us, when did you first get in touch with art in public spaces? The Friends of the Fine Arts Vienna, Society of Friends of the Fine Arts Vienna, are an association that finds the money to buy extremely expensive private artworks for galleries. So in other words, an artwork that only one association, one organization can have. Tell us about public art and when you became aware of it.
Well, I became aware of it many, many years back in the late 60s and 1970s, when I lived for a few years in New York and traveled to Chicago. Chicago was for me the revelation, because I saw this art in public spaces, beautiful works of art. I mean, really high caliber. For instance, Calder's Flamingo, the beautiful red sculpture. There were Picasso's, there was another Calder. and they have continued doing that in all the public, big public buildings. They had in front of those buildings, they had exactly, this was my first impression. This is the flamingo, fantastic. And they go on doing that. So that was my real impression, but that was different from the art in public space that we do, for instance, in Vienna. We've never had anything of the like, and still don't have, because we do different, we try to promote younger people to express their ideas and so forth. But these masterpieces, probably they couldn't have been afforded anyway, any longer. I mean, that was my super impression of really art in the best way to be presented to the public. Public was allowed to see it all, get to know the classical modern masters in the best way. So that was my super impression. But it didn't take, I wasn't with the Friends of the Fine Arts then. I lived in New York and did translations and interpreting. So, but I was always extremely keenly interested in art, and that's what got me to where I am today, doing and running this art society.
Fantastic. And Matthew, tell us, so public art, immediately upon Sylvia telling me that about, I remember seeing the flamingo in Chicago, makes me think about, of course, sculptures like David in front of the municipal building in Florence. I mean, it seems to be something that can belong to the public. I guess, what is your definition of public art? How did you get into it? You're a trained artist. I believe you did. I don't believe you can take a course in or do a bachelor or master's in public art. Maybe you can, I'm not sure. But tell us, how did you begin? How did you get into this?
Yeah, good. Actually, now you can even do a PhD in public art. So there are schools, all over the world, really. My interest in public art started through the lens of activism. So I was more, a young person with ideas and didn't know how to articulate them. So it was mostly protest, in the typical aesthetic of protest, people with a message on a sign saying, this is what we believe, this is what I think should be happening. And you try to, define your message tighter and tighter, because it's such a transactional space, so quick, with a car going by or someone walking. It's like, really, I kind of got disillusioned with it, where I was like, I don't know if what I'm saying is being heard. So, what I did is try to transform that. I used Rumi's, Rumi, the 13th century or 15th century mystic poet, I think Persian. He has part of a poem. He says, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing or right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. So he's kind of defining this idea of a third space. And so I kind of took that as the premise of a lot of the work I do. So instead of refining a message for a really quick interaction, I wanted to create a space, almost like a spectacle, that people came in through their curiosity. They said, I've not been here before. No one has. No one's seen a wall fall down in this town and sitting next to each other. So in a way, this kind of curiosity opens up or lowers people's guard, and they kind of drop their histories and drop their baggage, and they have a moment together. And I've always thought that actually is a pretty suitable moment for me to allow something to be seen. So a lot of the work is literally, how do you take the issues of a location and represent them in such a way where it's completely digestible, almost to the point where you're creating this attraction for them to want to be part of this thing. And that's only the beginning of all the projects. Obviously, the projects are only complete when the community appropriates it, when they have the conversations about, hey, this is our town. These are our issues, and they go further with the dialogue. So for me, art isn't only visual, but it's also, let's put it, this socially engaged is a term, or participatory, something that people can come right into and bring their backgrounds that informs the outcome of the work. So that's where I got into it. So it's not just only visual, but it actually has this social dimension as well.
Fantastic. And then back to you, Sylvia, when Matthew says that, he makes me think right away of the so-called Vereine or Gesellschaft in Austria and Germany. So these clubs, these associations that seem to have that kind of exact mission, where they bring people, different people who simply have an interest in the same thing, bring them together. I imagine that's a place where they can exchange ideas freely. Maybe now they are, of course, partisan politically or not, but it seems that kind of that seems like that kind of third space. What are your thoughts?
That's right. I mean, he's the one who does art and brings people together. We bring people together to look at art and have an impression. For instance, the latest example, our society does, among many other things, lectures, guided tours, whatnot, art trips. Our parliament has been redone over the past years, became more expensive, took longer, like every building project. And there's art, there's contemporary art in our parliament. And so they have guided tours through that contemporary art in scenes in the parliament. And we offer it, yes, that's our parliament, which is completely redone. And we started asking people to visit those guided tours and take part and see what their country has been, their money has been used for. And it is such a tremendous success. We had in springtime, we had 10 guided tours with 30 people each, and people can't get enough. Now I offered another 2, again, immediately booked. We put that on we send it by email to our members somewhere in the evening. Within 10 minutes, they were all booked, and people are crazy, you know, they're crazy. So now another 2, and I think we're going to spend all year arranging guided tours through art. And so that's one example, you know. And of course, the good effect is first they get to know what they paid for as taxpayers. Then they get a very knowledgeable guided tour, so they're educated, and it brings them together. They you know, friendships develop in the course of these tours, and so it is also very much in the sense of a community what we do. You're right. We take them to art. He does the art and brings people there. We take people to the art. But the idea is to get people together, right?
Fantastic! What an extraordinary Republican idea. Democracy in action. That sounds incredible. I hope to come myself. So Matthew, now on to Gentle Breeze.
Yes, let me share my screen here. We're going to watch another video. This is a work that happened in Boise, Idaho, and I'll just give a little bit of context for it. Boise was interested in producing a new work, and Boise, Idaho, someone told me this, I don't know if it's true. They said it's one of the most isolated cities in the United States. And their definition was that it takes the longest to drive to another metropolitan center or another city. So I guess it's kind of onto itself. And what that basically means is a city, however, it's surrounded by mountains and rivers and all this. And people, when I interviewed them through my outdoor living room, they spoke about this. They said, that's basically our identity. That's the greatest part about Boise. We have this dense urban fabric, but you can immediately get out into the mountains and the hills or down to the river on your lunch break. I said, okay, that's great. Let's try to capture that. However, Boise is also a developing city. And so they actually asked me, we need something bold. And so this was a new building was being produced and a brand new park. And they said this will be the centerpiece of it. So you'll see now what I created for them called Gentle Breeze.
This is Gentle Breeze here in the new park. Well, I'm an artist that works with communities. So every project is brand new. We've never done it before. This particular one happens to be a big pink tree with swings on it. Even though you're downtown, you always have a relationship to the mountain and to the river. One of the aspects of this project that's the strongest. How do we bring the outside, the rural, the pastoral into the city? And so we did it through a tree, undulating leaves, and also with the benches. And one of the things with the leaves that go back and forth, the wind that moves them, this tree is an indicator of that wind that comes over the hills into here. So it's actually kind of showing us our connection to the surroundings. The last little bit is that, Boise is in its moment, it's growing, and so we wanted to do something bold. So we actually picked a color that both, worked with all the different buildings and surroundings, but was totally unique and would stand out. I'm just watching people over and over just come right up and make themselves at home. So I think everything's working great.
I'm just going to share a little bit of images just so we can speak over it as we do. Yeah, this is a project. It was a brand new park that opened, and this woman, Cherie Buckner-Webb, she actually was a civil rights activist, and they named the park after her. So I developed this project in parallel with her park opening, and her and I took many photos together with this, but she cut the ribbon to the park, and she loves the project and told me it was a real honor to be part of this. But now it seems to be Boise, Idaho's most popular and photographed art piece. That's me and the mayor there. It has a big park with it, but it's one of those things where it's this little tree, the pastoral, the idea of the rural, embedded now within their urban fabric. I think I will leave it. And anyways, as I said, is popular. People keep on rotating out. Someone will sit, and then it will become empty, and then it will keep on going. So there's out throughout the day, just constantly.
Fantastic. So Matthew, we have a comment by Peter Soland. Very happy to hear about Matthew's theater project and Sylvia's endeavors. Okay, thank you very much, Peter. So yes, so Sylvia, what are your thoughts about Gentle Breeze?
Well, that was the second one that really charmed me, because again, it is such a friendly thing, you can feel the breeze, you can hear the little clutter maybe of the leaves, and people sitting there swinging happily away. And that is, for instance, I saw one red tree in my research in New York on the High Line. Beautiful thing. But it's a wonderful red tree, but it's just a tree. It sits there, it stands there, it's a tree by Pamela Rosenkranz, a beautiful object, but this is the difference that he makes it to use. I mean, people are so happy, look at them swinging around, and that is what makes the difference. And mostly art in public space is objects or installations that sit there, and you can admire them, you can admire the artist, or maybe you can hate it. After a time, even you hate it, you get used to it. Like with architecture, first you think, how could such an ugly building ever been put up? And then after a while you get used to it, and then you even feel fondly about it. So, but this is different because this is again brought to use. So this was the second one that really charmed me.
Matthew, what reactions have you had? Clearly, you became a famous person after this in Boise. So what has the reactions been? You said that you sat with the mayor. Have parents come up to you and said, "Oh, my kids love this," or people who got married because they sat by chance next to each other on this swing?
I have had other projects where people have told me they've gotten engaged on it. So maybe something's happened here. It's been up for 2 years now. So I think we put it in 2021. And yeah, someone actually went into the Office of Public Art. At least this is what I was told by the director, or one of the main people there. And they demanded that all new artworks of Boise be held to the level of this project. They just said, this is really changing the face of public art in this city. And we need to do better with all the new stuff. So I just took that as a compliment. Like, I think we did pretty good. It's well loved, and seems like people took to it right away. It's unique for me. Every project I do is different. As you guys saw at Storefront Theater, it's totally different from a pink tree. Always trying to do these custom specific works.
Fantastic. So Sylvia, now let's go over to you, and I'd like Matthew to think about this as we're talking, which is about how more or less when you don't have an artwork that is instantly popular, as you said, that you may hate it, and it's right there, as we know about sounds, about music, it's very difficult to have in public because everybody has to hear it. So if you don't like the music, it really bothers you. So now let's talk a little bit about artwork, public artwork in Vienna. So we have several artworks that we're going to take a look at here. Tell us a little bit about these projects and why you chose them.
Well, there's one where you're going to start. Are you going to start with Cibulka as long as this is the cap? This, for instance, is one of the latest that is called Go Be Girls Go. And it is in pink and in purple, which are the colors for lesbian and homosexual and so forth. And it's supposed to be, that is the closest that comes to Matthew's art, because it's supposed to be an asylum, a place where girls who are different, being trans or lesbian or whatever, can gather under this big baseball cap, and it's called B Girls, Go Be Girls Go, because they're not A girls, they're B girls, they're different. And there were famous B boys, also the ones who were not in the very A line. So the B girls are being offered a center to sit down, relax, maybe picnic, and get together and team up together to be stronger against the world, which is not always extremely friendly to them.
Wow. And so this is something clearly that's meant to also show the clear divisions in Vienna, the people who are against having lesbians in public, or people express their sexuality in public, and those who would like to be able to express it freely. So I imagine this has run into some problems with the public.
In a way, on the other hand, we are in Vienna, sort of the pioneers of individual sexual freedom. We had the so-called Life Ball, which showed all sorts of what are they called, LPTG, whatever the letters are, and people are, and we have parades, rainbow parades, like every other. Maybe too much, maybe too many, but in principle, people have become really sort of tolerant. I mean, you know, they say everybody should live their own life, and of course, much progress has been made over the past years with the help of objects like this or installations, but also with brave people stepping out into the open and saying, okay, I lead this in this life, and please leave me alone, and that I do it my way. And it's gradually more and more being accepted.
Okay.
So people are not really too conservative and stubborn about that. Plus, it's none of their business anyway. And this is another one. That's a funny one. That is by Natalie de Divan, and she makes anagrams. She chooses also abandoned stores and whatnot. An old this was a perfumery, and she transformed it into permanent fury. She's permanently fury against injustice and whatever happens in the world. So I think that is quite clever. She turns a perfumery into a permanent fury. There was another example. One was called a cafe restaurant, and that was transformed into True Facts Arena. This is the perfumery and then the permanent fury. So yeah, it's fun. It's fun in a way, but it has a certain meaning to it, and a certain goal that she wants to point out and hit it. So quite clever. And then we have another one. Have you Prüfzentrum in Pannen, feminist. Yeah, that's the one I like very much. This is by a lady called Katarina Cibulka, and she does huge embroiderings. She does, whenever a building is being constructed, there's the scaffolding, and she covers the scaffolding with her embroidery with a message that she has. And this one says, as long as he makes the cash while I work for change, I will be a feminist. And it has this is a pun, has a double meaning. He makes the cash, of course, and while I work for change, meaning the small money, but also also while I work for a change in society, in environment, while I work for and fight for equal rights and equal pay and so forth. So she's a clever lady, and she has done it many times. It always starts as long as, and then she points out some condition that has to be improved, and then she says, as long as that exists, I'm a feminist. So I like her very much. Katarina Cibulka, it's her name. She's done many scaffoldings in various buildings. Of course, that's temporary work. It comes off when the building is done. Then she moves someplace else. And this must be my emergency gallery, I suppose. That little forlorn place, right?
Yes, it is.
This was also a clever project by a man. We also have men. We are not discriminating. Reinhold Zisser. He invented the idea of emergency galleries. Vienna is expanding very rapidly because the population is growing. And new houses are being in new quarters are being developed with subways being combined with these new areas, new buildings, of course, constructed with halfway affordable apartments. And this guy said, okay, it's all very nice to have new apartments, have accommodation for young couples, but what we need is art. So he developed this emergency gallery wherever a new court has been set up. The emergency gallery is being set up and shows art. And when the art is done, some volunteer has to disassemble the emergency gallery, has to number the parts and put it up someplace else where it's desperately needed. So emergency art is also an essential way of surviving. So that's why these emergency galleries are needed.
Fantastic. So Matthew, we've seen here artworks that are clearly meant to provoke. They are not they're a little bit different from your philosophy, which is to get the difficult conversations going once we've already shared some moments, pleasant moments together. Most of these artworks are really trying to provoke someone right away and say, listen here, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think that's one of art's greatest assets, is to be able to speak to many people, but bring everybody onto the same page. I think I had a professor, he said something during class one time. He says, one point of entry, many interpretations. So basically, I always think of a successful artwork is that everybody knows how to enter this piece, yet they all bring their own personal backgrounds. And so it's a way of re-examining issues that are tangential or, in the ether or not directly in front of us. How do we make those more central so that we can actually absorb them and discuss them and grow with them? So yeah, I think art is a fantastic vehicle to do that. So just appreciate the works that were shared.
And Matthew, also your beginnings in protests and doing manifestations and all that. Have you, clearly that's not your, you've chosen a different strategy to get people to think about issues today, but now have you also encountered that kind of adversity where somebody says, that color is hideous, I don't like that, or this artwork makes me want to move out of town? How do you handle that? What is your thought? Because as we know, with many artworks, that they are not accepted or they're not appreciated until a later date.
I have actually never produced a work that received anything that was negative, that was like from a larger voice. However, that might happen further up the chain in terms of the bureaucracy of producing a work, because a lot of the works I work on are funded by municipalities or cities or whatever. So sometimes along the way, people were like, we just don't like this idea. So I've never had one get all the way through. And, even with the that tree, Gentle Breeze in Boise, when they asked me to work with them, I presented them 3 ideas. I said, here's 3 different directions I think are interesting. and the city and the park people and a number of people that were involved in producing this work, they said, okay, we can't have this many ideas. You've given us a problem here. We like them all. They said, can we whittle it down to the 2 top, and then we throw it into the media? We'll run some things on social media and in the newspaper where people can vote on which idea. And I'd never been part of anything like that. So I said, yeah, go for it. I have no idea. But anyways, yeah, the public, there was a lot of comments. We don't like this one. We like this one. And it was a fight back and forth. Eventually the tree idea won, and we matured that into, and now it's love. So I don't know. It's interesting. There's many points, especially when you go online, where people just love to criticize. So you can, open yourself up to that. I don't often do that. Usually when the work is done, people comment, but it's usually positive. I have had one project, and this might take too long to speak about, but where I presented an idea to a community. I worked with them for a while. I was actually in Nebraska as well. And I said, listen, we got this. This is what we came up with. And I could kind of feel in the crowd that they weren't liking it. And then the questions started coming, and they're like, well, this shouldn't go on Main Street, or, Tom, who owns the building next to it, he has to pull out his truck. And all of a sudden I started getting this feeling, this project is not hitting the nail on the head. So my partner who I was working on it with, she was local at the time. I told her before, I said, Adele, listen to everybody, but let's not do a public vote, because public votes are too spontaneous, and who knows. But anyways, I felt so much negative in the room about this design that I just said, Adele, I think I'm going to run a public. And she goes, yeah, let's run a public vote. So I said, okay, everybody in this room, can you tell me who does not like this? And majority of the hands went up. I said, okay, understood. This was our best attempt. We done this, but it sounds like it's not resonating. Can we shift and pivot now and talk about why it doesn't work? What is a better idea? And so anyways, we just took in a lot of feedback, and then we got in the car, Adele and I, and we drove away. And I said, what do you think about that? And she's like, yeah, that was intense, but I actually enjoyed it. And I said, I did the same. I think we got a lot of real answers here. And anyways, we parlayed that into a new project, which actually was a success in the town. I won't go into it because it's a little bit of a story, but yeah, we were able to have these negative comments filter into a better outcome for that community. So that's how I can answer that question.
Wow, inspiring, fantastic. It's difficult to be an artist, and it seems that you know how to manage those difficult situations. So our final art piece for the night is Harm to Table. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, what I'll do, let me show a little bit of a presentation. So this was when I was invited to Boulder, Colorado in the United States. And when I first got there, I started doing my research. And one of the things I came upon was someone said, Boulder, Colorado has the highest density of climate scientists. And I said, why is that? And they said, well, there's all these federal labs that study the atmosphere and climate out there. So the first tip I had was, hey, there's a lot of people studying the climate here. That will be one of the assets, I believe, for this project. So what I did is I went to all these different scientists and I asked them, can you give me a list of all the plants and natural resources that will leave due to climate change in the next 20 to 40 years? And a lot of people are like, you can't project into the future. We have little, I don't want to hang my hat on anything. But I said, okay, we've seen what's left, what left the area or migrated to a more northern or southern climate. Can't we project? And finally, people, I got I can't remember how many scientists, but they actually said, yep, these are clearly the plants and natural resources that will be leaving. And some of them were easy, like on the southern facing slopes of the mountains, which get the most sun, the soil was becoming more arid. And they said, these pine trees here are just in decline. I think in 20 or 40 years, we'll have much less, or maybe they'll be extinct on the south facing slopes. Then they talked about this OSHA plant, and they talked about whatever. So anyways, that was interesting. So I got this list of all these plants and natural resources leaving this area in the next 20, 40 years. The next thing was happening is that I started realizing that Boulder is a super foodie town, tons of food, everybody's eating. There was even a portion of the, I went to one restaurant and they were on the menu was this thing called fairy bubbles. And I go, what is fairy bubbles? And they said, well, it's a drink, but it has like, tincture in it. It has this thing squeezed in it. You pray over it and all this. I said, okay, I'll try one of those. But it was at that moment, I'm like, wow, these people are really, really invested in food. So then I connected the two. I said, listen, we have all this research of all these plants and there's all this food. So I combined them. And so I'll show you the video of what we made. So we basically made a table that travels and serves food that has ingredients in it that are made from that list of plants that are leaving. So this project is literally translating the scientific data into an experience that people eat. So you're actually eating their work. And this table goes all around the United States. And each time we work with new scientists to understand what's leaving that particular area, and chefs that can cook it into a food. I'm just going to stop the video there. So far, you've seen musicians at either end. You saw a menu. That menu basically just described the food. It's not didactic or preachy or telling anybody anything. It literally just has what food it is, what food ingredients it has, and the ingredients that are leaving the area. It just has why that's happening. Here we have like a gravity fed system so that people can serve themselves. Up here is like a soup. Down here is a kombucha. They go down these lines and people will turn the faucet to be able to feed themselves. Great. I'm going to pop back to presentation here. So yeah, this has traveled. Each time the menu changes and different people at the table. Ultimately, it's a framework. It's people bring their own experience to this. Obviously, it's free food and an experience. Sit down, have fun. But all of a sudden, when people start reading the menu and start talking, it does dovetail into their experiences. Either they want to talk about recycling or they want to talk about, hey, I was a climate scientist. This message is very hard to get to people. Hey, where are we now with, the way the world is working? And we're part of the Anthropocene, this epoch where humans are actually changing the planet. And so it can go anywhere and everybody has their own entry point because you're sitting together. So that's what this is project is about.
Fantastic. Wow. Okay. So I'd like us now to go on to our final comments. Sylvia, I'd like to start with you. What does the future of public art look like to you?
What is the future of public art? I was thinking, for instance, our last art trip took us to Oslo. And I've come to the conclusion that contemporary high-quality architecture is also a work of art in public space. And the perfect example would be the Opera of Oslo, which is done by a group of architects who call themselves Snøhetta. And it has various various exactly what you have in the middle, and you can climb up right up to the rooftop. It's really interesting, and people do that. So in a way, it is what you, Matthew, have done, getting people into your art. We saw people climbing up like ants right up to the rooftop, and it's so interesting. So they use their opera, the outside and the inside, but also the outside they climb up. Nobody falls, but it can be pretty slippery because it's even open in winter. But people use it, and they sort of conquer it and go to the rooftop and have a fantastic view of Oslo and enjoy the view. So this good architecture is also art in public space, I would say.
Okay.
So this might also be the future. For instance, our next trip is taking us to Bilbao in the north of Spain, which has developed tremendously because of the so-called Guggenheim effect. Guggenheim Museum by Frank Gehry was done as a first in an industrial ruin. Bilbao was in shambles. And then came this shiny Guggenheim Museum, and all of a sudden the place woke up. And when you go back now, you enter a different world, like Rip Van Winkle, if you remember that short story. He wakes up after 7 years into a different world. And this is, they call it the Guggenheim effect in Bilbao. Now all the prominent architects internationally and Spanish have worked there, from Rafael Moneo, Calatrava, Foster did the subway, Frank Gehry of course did this, and it has become a hotspot of contemporary architecture, and all these buildings, look at that. I mean, that is definitely a work of art in public space, I would say.
Fantastic. Matthew, what does the public art of the future look like?
That's a good question, right? I do know that towns and cities have now started bringing artists to the table. So back in the day, it might have been, art might have been an afterthought. We're going to add it. Landscape plans, landscape architectural plans, or maybe architecture played the dominant role, and those cost a ton of money, of course. Right now, it seems like artists are actually at the table along with the planning process, because we're starting to see that you can really embed or expose the identity of a location or its problems, or give it a feature that it's never had before. So I think there'll probably be more integration of ideas and creativity into the built environment. I also think that there are many, different ways public art can be created, or its mission. One could be for beautification, like just making things beautiful, pedestrian experiences easier. However, then there are some works that actually try to rip open the social fabric or present ideas that are more challenging and saying, hey, we need to look at this. Part of our community is not represented, or we want to have, a new kind of energy in our town. So I believe we'll see more. And I think that it's up to the artist to actually bring ideas into this public space. So hopefully that happens more and more.
Absolutely inspiring. Matthew Mazzotta, Sylvia Eisenburger-Kunz, thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me.
So let's take a look.
Thank you.
Let's see how
Thank
we
you
can.
and goodbye, huh?
Thank you, Sylvia. Let's see how we can. We've got Matthew has a TED talk in which he goes through a lot of what he said today and more. And I will put this in the chat room for anybody who's interested. And let's see how we can stay in touch with Matthew. Here is his website, which is easy enough, MatthewMazzotta.com. And there's a Storefront Theater. I recognize that right away. So Matthew, people can reach out to you with their questions or comments.
Yes, of course. Go to the website. You'll see all the projects. If you scroll down, you'll see all of our projects. We have new ones coming. But yeah, if you want to stay in contact, please do.
Fantastic. That's MatthewMazzotta.com. And here is the Society of Friends of the Fine Arts Vienna, and it is kunstfreunde.at. Sylvia, people can reach out to you here at this address at Eisenburger@Kunstfreunde.de.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. First, they can
Fantastic.
inform themselves of what we have done and what is coming up and what's being planned and so forth. And they can join. This is myself, and then there's Karl Wagner, our secretary, and you can approach both of us and see what's going on and join and whatever. Get any
Wonderful.
information that we hopefully can supply.
Wonderful. So please feel free to reach out to Sylvia with your questions or comments. Again, that's kunstfreunde.at. So coming up next week, we have Gino Catani and Simone Ferriani, who are entrepreneurship professors. We're going to be talking about innovation and entrepreneurship. That's next Wednesday. All information is available at www.simeonmorrow.com. Again, thank you so very much to Matthew Mazzotta and to Sylvia Eisenburger-Kunz. Thank you very much to Victoria and Frederick Mulligan and Agnieszka and Benoit Rivolet for their support of this show. Most of all, thanks to you, our participants who make it all worthwhile. From Vienna, Austria, New London, New Hampshire, and Canton, New York, goodbye and see you next Wednesday.
Goodbye. Thank you very much. Good night. Have a nice evening or a nice afternoon in the States.
Thank you.